Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome. Welcome to Serene Sunday. How are you doing? Serene Sundays are a time where we come together and we talk about that which will give us the momentum we need through the week, right? And these are usually played for you on Sunday, but you could play them at the time where your week starts, because I know that some of you have different schedules and you might not necessarily be able to play it at a point where your Sunday might be like you might be in the middle of work. So play this at the start of your whatever your week is. Okay. All right. And I hope you really enjoy this, because I certainly had a really good time looking this stuff up for you. All right, let's begin. So invite. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also make sure that, like I said, I don't take any form of payment or anything like that. So the best way you could pay me is by getting people to subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's not really much on there, but it's only because I love going live, and the reason is because I feel it's most real. It's not fake. And so this way, if I make any errors, well, then you get to see my humanity, So I don't like to record and then, do it that way. I'd rather just go live. So that's number one. Number two, if you're watching this on a watch party, make sure that you, know that any comments you leave the comments at the on the original live, because I usually delete the watch parties, but you could small comments, things like that, you could put on the watch parties. And I'm on with you while you're watching it. All right. Okay, so let's begin. Kinemeticancy. My name is Druid Nicholas Declan, founder of the Druid Circle, Druid Order of Blessed Stone and Wood, Druid University, and conservative pagan media outlet, soon to come, Druid Living, along with the Druid Society International, a group of conservative pagans that aren't interested in the rigmarole of everything going on in politics. All right, let's begin. So kinemeticancy is the study of being specific in prayer. And being specific in prayer, if you will, is, I think that is really the epitome of what we want. It's the epitome of what we, of not only what we want, but I think it's really tantamount when we start talking about what we aim for, what we desire. If that specificity is not there, then we end up off the mark. And as a result, that prayer may not be answered, not because of the fact that the God or gods of your understanding aren't listening, but because you're not clarifying or communicating properly with them. All right? So let's begin. Kinemetics. So kinemetics is basically the description of motion, okay? All right. And kinemeticancy is basically prayer in motion. There's not much on the net on this, not much on the internet on this. And the reason is because you really have to know a good deal of sorcery to really get involved in the way we become one with Source, right? That's all a sorcerer is, a person who is one with Source. And kinemetics is basically that idea of motion, and kinemeticancy is that idea of using the science of kinemetics and placing it in theosophy, placing it in a way where we can make magic happen for ourselves, so that in the end we find our own peace. When we talk about kinemetics, we talk about two very exact things, okay? And the first thing we talk about is the specific position of persons, places, things, and ideas. The second thing we talk about in kinemetics, if you will, is the positional change, and that is the change of the positional change of persons, places, things, and ideas. Sometimes it's important to realize that not only do we have to acknowledge our position, but we also have to acknowledge that our position changes, and that position needs to be specific, and that change needs to be acknowledged. Tonight, I'm going to help you understand specifically how to use this idea, this science, and translate it into a basic sorcery for you to understand. Now, if I normally would go ahead and do this talk, it would probably be about 8 hours. And so I'm not going to bore you with 8 hours of stuff, but I'm going to give you the summary of everything I talk about in tonight's Serene Sunday. All right, let's begin. So kinemetics is not dynamics, okay? And we're not going to cover dynamics tonight. Dynamics covers the source, okay? The source of motion, okay? And the positional and the source of positional change, whereas kinemetics is simply just that. It is just the specific position and the positional change, not necessarily the source of it. I'm not going to talk about dynamics tonight because it's a little bit too detailed, and I want you to try to take for me to teach that, you would have to have a class with me, and I unfortunately can't do that in an hour with you, okay? All right, so how do we begin to think about kinemetics in prayer? How do we begin to think about the idea of utilizing this science and placing it into prayer? If you have a piece of paper and pencil, I want you to write 2 questions down. So take your time, get ready. Don't be writing it on your cell phones. Don't be doing any of that. Get a leaf and get a pencil, a real pencil and a leaf. I'll give you a second. All right, write this question down. Number 1, what precise position do you start at in prayer? What precise position do you start at in prayer? What precise position do you start out in prayer? I do not mean from the point of your positional body. And while it is incredibly folkish, while it's incredibly, if you will, tribal, while it's incredibly old religion, to kneel, to bow, to stand, to sit, to genuflect, to double genuflect, to hit your hand on your heart or your breast. Wow, that's incredibly important in old prayer. I don't want you to think about this as a physical position. I want you to think about this as your astral position. Okay? Where are you at astrally? Okay? What precise location are you at before you begin prayer? Okay? That's your first question. That's how you're going to navigate through this Serene Sunday. All right? Second question. Here it comes. What positional change? What positional change, write this down, will you be at after completing that prayer? What positional change will you be at after completing that prayer? I think sometimes when we pray, right, we think about the moment, we think about the position, we think about where we're at astrally, where we're at emotionally, where we're at mentally, but we don't necessarily think of the change. We don't necessarily think of the outcome, right? And I think that is one of the dangers of not knowing how to pray. When we pray to the God or gods of our understanding, okay, one of the things we do is that we focus on the prayer, we focus on the bidding, but we don't focus necessarily on the change. We don't necessarily focus on that positional change, where we're at and where we will be at by the end of that prayer. Many of you may say, well, Druid Nicholas, that's impossible. How will I know where I'm at the end of that prayer? And that's why I'm talking about specifics. That when we use specific language to the God or gods of your understanding, we begin to process the idea and the invention of the outcome. When you find out the answers of those two questions, you then are a kinematic-cancer, if you will. Kinematic-cancer. And the reason is because then you have begun to begin the steps you need to process the prayer and evaluate the outcome. So this is, as you know, when we start out very high, and then I take you deeper and deeper into what you're going to learn. Once you understand those two questions, we could then move into the deeper outcome. Now, when you want to test the relationship between these two questions, that is the position, okay, where you're at, the specific position, and the positional change, okay, of prayer. Where's your prayer position? Where's your specific prayer position? And where is your positional, where's your prayer positional change? When we want to test the relationship between these two questions, we begin to talk about something new. And that something new is called displacement of prayer. Displacement of prayer. displacement of prayer is activated when we acknowledge two very important points. Number one, the initial position. The initial position. Number two, the final position. The final position. Now, when we talk about the initial position and the final position, we actually then begin to see that specificity, that prayer position, that specific prayer position that we start out in. And then we start to begin to see that the outcome, or if you will, the final position, the positional change that has been made in your astral plane once that prayer has completed. Then we begin to see that that final position and that initial position is the displacement of prayer, right? We need to displace prayer so that we can see the difference and modulate a starting point and an ending point. Okay? All right. Think of it like this. Think of it as your initial outcome as sort of a baseline, okay? When you go to physical therapy, when you go to maybe a counselor or a psychiatrist, when you go to a doctor, when you go to anyone for, say, help, even your mentor, a good mentor will say, okay, this is their baseline. This is where they start out, okay? And then they watch and watch and watch over time your progression. And then they show you a mirror of what you look like now, that is in the future, your future now, and your present now, okay? And that outcome, or that final position, is called condition. Condition. So think of it as your baseline and then your condition. Because the condition doesn't exist prior to the baseline. Even though you may have a condition, it's not the condition that will end up to be your final position. This is the essence of the displacement of prayer. This is the most important idea and aspect that you can ask the God or gods of your understanding, so that you understand very clearly when you start out and when you end, there are two different points. And that is not measured in letters as in point A and point B. There is no name for those points. That's why we call it the displacement of prayer. One thing that I want you to do right now is, and I have another activity for you to help you kind of bring all this in. I want you to draw manas on your piece of paper. Just manas. If you don't know what manas is, it's the letter M. It's a rune. It's the letter M, and then basically it's two lines and an X that joins both lines at the very top. Okay, I'm gonna just show you this. Sorry about that. Now it's gonna be backwards, but that's basically what manas is at the very top. You see it? That's manas. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to draw manas, and on top, and then I want you to draw a line, And then I want you to write the gable. And the gable is an X. And what does gable mean? Gable means gift, right? Because manas stands for humanity. It stands for you. You are the manas. The gift, the gable, the X. That X marks the spot. It comes from the very old ancient runic letter. Gale, prize, lottery, lot, treasure. And so I want you to take, to show you this displacement of prayer visually, I want you to take manas, I want you to draw a line, and underneath manas, I want you to place the gable, the X, if you will. So the M and the X. To show you that there is division at the baseline, at the point of specificity of prayer, in the displacement prayer, versus what's going to happen, and that is what I want you to draw next. Beside that image, I want you to draw the manas, and within the legs of the manas, I want you to draw the gable within the legs, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to draw a circle around it, so it looks something like this. You see that? There's your manas, there's the circle, and there's the gable. Okay? You guys can see that. All right. Now that you have that, when you see those two symbols, okay, that is the picture of what displacement of prayer looks like, and everything that I've taught you thus far in displacement of prayer, okay? And this is the first primary level of what? This is the first or primary level of kinemetics, all right, of prayer. Now, once you hit that final position, okay, we need to take you deeper into the next level, which is called the velocity of prayer. The velocity of prayer. One thing I want you to understand, and I don't know whether or not I have it here, I don't think I do, but yeah, I do. Velocity is not speed, okay? The speed of your prayer means nothing. You can say the words of any prayer as fast as you want to say them, or as slow as you want to say them. And that has nothing to do at all with achieving the gable, with achieving that which you desire, that which you want, that which you need. Okay? The velocity of prayer is based on two factors. The first factor is direction. This means that at every predicament in your life, the prayer that you have will change. And every change is basically called a turn. Okay? When you turn, okay, your prayer changes, and therefore that which you once manifested will maybe not be manifested because you no longer are focusing on it. So that every time a new predicament or a situation occurs in your life, a new prayer arises. Okay? When that new prayer arises, all right, one of the things you have to do is go back and think about the potency of the displacement of prayer that you once had. Got it? And the second thing is, the second factor of this velocity of prayer is the rate of motion of your prayer, which we call intervals. So, if you ever see Morse code, and you ever see Morse code written out, you know it's lines and dots, right? It's lines and dots, lines and dots, lines and dots. Well, that's sort of what happens in the rate of motion for us. When we pray in intervals, right? Something might occur. One of those predicaments might come up. It might stop us from doing any prayer, and then we have to hold. But then when we get back to it, we might go back again and do it at regular intervals. But then that might stop. You see what I'm saying? So it's the rate of motion has nothing to do with speed. It's just where we're at on the timeline from getting from point to point, and where we're at on that timeline, and what is the interval of that prayer. The reason why many use prayer beads, okay? Many use prayer beads simply because it's a good way to keep the interval going. And that's why using prayer beads is such an ancient truth. The reason why prayer beads is an ancient truth is it keeps us on the wheel of prayer. Okay? So that the velocity of prayer is basically based on the factor of direction, and basically based on the factor of intervals, or the rate of motion. When we take those two things, when we take the direction on one hand and we take the rate of motion on the other hand, then we could see exactly what that velocity looks like. If you want to think of it like this, think of it like the direction, or the turns, the twists, is the logistics, okay, of how that prayer is going to play out. And the rate of which it will play out would be the intervals, the motion. You see what I'm saying? And when we talk about this, we begin to see that there's two necessities. One will be the twists and turns that are made during that prayer line. And two, how many times are you going to stop, pause? You see what I'm saying? When you drive, you make left turns, you make right turns, you go straight. Not many times do we go in reverse unless we're trying to park the vehicle. We also see lights. We see the red light, we see the green light, we see the yellow light. Okay? Sometimes we speed up and go super fast during that yellow light. Sometimes we slow down if we don't think we're going to make it. Green means go, but it doesn't necessarily mean just go. You still got to be aware of what could possibly happen at that intersection. Moreover, what is also important is the red light. How many times do we stop? Is there construction work on the road? Is there, is there, an officer on the road that's trying to make sure that no one's going beyond the speed that we need to go to ensure the safety of many people. And so these are the factors of the velocity, if you will, of prayer, which is different than the displacement of prayer. Whereas displacement is, your baseline and then your condition. Your velocity is basically the direction and then the interval. Not speed, not how fast you go. All right. Now, I want to talk to you on this next issue, and that is why Father Time is so important. Father Time is so important. When I brought up Father Time in a group, that's why I don't belong to groups anymore. I'm totally out of groups. It's just a bunch of people with, that are just, they will knock you down at the minute that your idea does not fit their political agenda. So what I did is I just left every single group, Druid groups. I don't belong to any of them. I don't do groups. When I talked about Father Time once to ADF, I'll never forget, I was like completely laughed at. And now we see the importance of time right here. And this is why Earth Mother and Time Father exist. It has nothing to do with Harry Potter. It has to do with nature. I want to bring up this idea of average versus instantaneous. Average means what do things look like overall? Instantaneous means what do things look like at their point, okay? At a specific point. And we could do this with anything I taught you so far. You could do it with the displacement, you could do it with the velocity, you could do it with any of the factors of any of those, all right? One thing I want you to think about, though, is the average velocity of prayer and how to measure it. The average velocity of prayer, okay, is point to point over overall time. Point to point over overall time, meaning that when you divide those points by the overall time, you get the average, if you will, the average velocity of prayer. Now, instantaneous velocity of prayer is quite different, because that's your prayer motion or moment over overall time. Okay? Why are these important? These are important because you need to have specific measurements when talking about what you're praying for, what you are trying to invite into your life, what you are hoping to invite into your life, what you want to invite into your life and make manifest. And I think that in itself is the velocity of prayer. It is in itself the average and instantaneous, if you will, velocity. Because you have to know where you're at overall, and you also have to know where you're at from point to point. If you fail to remember that, then there's no sense of continuing your prayer. And when you begin to realize and become aware of those points, whether or not they're points or whether or not it's an overall overarching average, you still have to maintain that sort of metric, prayer metric, if you will. How do we activate the velocity of prayer? We activate the velocity of prayer when we acknowledge that prayer is ongoing. And when we acknowledge that prayer is ongoing and not simply one time, not twice, not thrice, and I think it's coarse, not coarse. But it is a duration, okay? And when we acknowledge that it is ongoing, then we begin to live in prayer. How cool is that? We begin to become prayerful. We live in prayer. We are prayerful beings. And knowing that we inhabit a body by our heart and soul and mind and spirit, just covered with this body, then we begin to see the importance of why all of this is so relative. When we think of the velocity of prayer, we think of three things, okay? That prayer is long-term. The focus is endurance. And it's goal-oriented. Whereas when we think of the displacement of prayer, that what I talked about first, prayer is positional. Remember that position? Its focus is humility. And it's not goal-oriented, it's step-oriented, right? So whereas the velocity of prayer is long-term, the displacement of prayer is positional. And while the velocity of prayer is based on endurance, the displacement of prayer is based on humility. And while the velocity of prayer is goal-oriented, the displacement of prayer is what? Step-oriented. Okay? Once we think about these things, then we begin to comprehend the idea of this culmination of velocity, with displacement, that both can exist. And they exist in the kinemetics of prayer. All right. The last focus, the last part of kinemetics of prayer, or kinemeticancy, is basically the idea of the acceleration. The acceleration of prayer is a bit difficult to explain, but I'm going to try to do it as easy as possible. First of all, there is no deceleration of prayer. It does not exist. You cannot decelerate prayer. Once you accelerate, you can't decelerate. Okay? There is positive acceleration of prayer and negative acceleration of prayer, right? Positive and negative accelerations of prayer. There is no deceleration, okay? You are either accelerating in a positive way or you're accelerating in a negative way, but you're both going forward. Deceleration would mean that you are slowing down, and since this is not about speed, you cannot speed up and slow down. You just accelerate. All right? So once you understand that there is only a positive and negative effect on acceleration, then we can begin to talk about how that's applicable to our daily prayer and how that's applicable to our prayerful life, to us living in prayer, to the God of gods of our understanding. Acceleration is basically the outcome of displacement and velocity. Displacement, again, is the direction plus the condition. What we talked about, point to point, the baseline and the condition, okay? And the velocity, again, is direction and motion. Remember, motion was the moment. Direction was the turns, the points in which we turn. This creates something called magnitude. Your magnitude of prayer is going to give you that purposeful point within you where you exude the prayer, where you cry out. It is the cry of the deer. And that magnitude, as many people would probably say, that magnitude is made visible by a symbol. It looks like the symbol of sonar, the symbol that Aquaman, if you will, puts out, that the waves you see that start from a dot and that ripple, right? We see it on debit cards today. It's a point with the curves that get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you whatever. It's that sonar. It's that boom, 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 boom. And that magnitude, if you will, is the focus of acceleration. We focus our acceleration on two things: the final condition, and durable horsepower. The opposite or antithesis of the final condition is a tantrum. When we don't get what we want, we sit there and we cry out. Ah! I keep on seeing a vision of a person. I'll say person because I think it's politically correct, even though I'm not politically correct. On their knees, because they didn't get what they wanted a few years ago. And durable horsepower, the antithesis of that is what? Nagging. We think about the idea of nagging our parent or parents, mommy, 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 daddy, 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 daddy. Well, the God or gods of our understanding don't really respond to that sort of nonsense. They do, I believe, see us as individuals, but they also base who we are off of our character, right? But they also expect things from us too. The God or gods of your understanding will expect you to do things, to be and act a certain way in life. And when that's out of place, then your prayerfulness no longer has, acceleration, no longer has displacement, and no longer has velocity. But the final condition, when you take that final condition and you take that durable horsepower and you merge them together, you focus on the gable. The X marks the spot. And when we focus on that, then we don't have to worry about tantrums, getting what we want, We don't have to focus on nagging the gods every single second. Because once we are undoubtedly in a prayerful state, we no longer need to pray. If we think of it in the way that we are always praying. Do you see what I'm saying? That we are always prayerful. All right. Like velocity, where we talked about instantaneous velocity and average velocity, we're going to talk about average acceleration and instantaneous acceleration of prayer. So, your average acceleration of prayer is basically waves, right? Just your waves like this, just they look like this, like when you're, like sound waves, if you will. They're just like this, okay? But the instantaneous acceleration is the point, or points within those waves. It's the point of the turn, right? It's the point of the motion, the moment. That's the difference between the average velocity and the average acceleration, with the instantaneous velocity and the instantaneous acceleration. Why is that important to know? It's important to know so that you understand how your prayer life is actually working in concordance with your daily activity. If you live in prayer and you are one with the holy Druids, nothing can stop you. No hex, no blood spell, no evil eye. Hell, not even Baylor will be able to take you down, because you are one with the ancients. Do you see that? That's why we need to understand your average acceleration and your instantaneous acceleration, to check back in every once in a while and see, oh, where was I at there? Where am I at here? Where will I be at tomorrow? So tonight, before I give you your feriado, which is your Druidic mantra, before I give you that, I want to cover that we talked about a number of things that I hope help you now. We talked about the idea of KINEMETICANCY, which is the art of being specific in prayer. Kinemetics is, basically the description of motion. And we apply that science to prayer to create that vagueness that we wanted, so that we understand what the kinematics look like on an astral plane. Do you see what I'm saying? We understood that there were three factors of kinematics. Number one was the displacement of prayer. Number two was the velocity of prayer. And number three was the acceleration of prayer. Okay? We learned that the displacement of prayer deals with position, while the velocity of prayer deals with motion, and acceleration deals not with speed. Remember, the acceleration or deceleration, while that doesn't exist, the acceleration of prayer deals with magnitude. Okay? And I hope those help you. And now we're going to do some magic, and we're also going to do some we're going to do the Druidic mantra, which is the Vriadal. And here it goes. I want you to write this one down because this is a long one, okay? Now, you could kind of curtail it the way you want once I give it to you. Don't try not to curtail it too much, but if you want, try to keep it rhythmic with what I'm telling you. So you have your pieces, you have your leaf and your pencil. So write this down, okay? My prayer has direction, motion, and magnitude. Everything we talked about. Because my prayer has direction, motion, and magnitude. Magnitude is magnitude. Because I am aware. My prayer has direction, motion, and magnitude because I am aware of my position. Right? Position deals with direction. Conscious of my rate, because rate deals with motion. Conscious of my rate. And determined in my production, because production deals with magnitude. Of my intended outcome of my prayerful living. Of my intended outcome of my prayerful living. You guys could go ahead and replay that if you want, if you didn't get it all. And now for Druid. Okay, here it goes. What I want you to do is, not today, but you'll see what I'm doing, and then later through the week, I want you to pick up about, hold on just a second. 7 wood sticks. Something that you can either carve or use a pencil and draw on. I don't like to use pen or marker or any of that stuff on wood. I pencil on wood, okay? And I'm going to teach you some ways that will help you practice everything I taught you tonight, okay? One of the things that you will need to know is you will need to know how you are doing in prayer. How are you doing with the God or gods of your understanding? And here we go. All right. So there we go. We got chaos. Are you liking the idea that I totally invert it for you? Because I knew everything I'm doing is in reverse here. Okay? And cosmos. Okay? So you got cosmos and you got chaos. All right. What I want you to do is I want you to take, okay, those 5 planks, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planks. Those 7 planks, and what I want you to do is I want you to carve or draw this line on one of the planks, your little blocks, okay? Carve it on both sides. On the second, I want you to double the wave. This is a single wave. I want you to double the wave, quadruple it, okay, on another one. So on one plank, you're going to do this. On the second, you're going to do this one. On the third, you're going to do this one. Okay? And then you're going to keep on doubling it. Okay? Double it here on this plank, double it here on this plank, double it here on this plank, and double it here on this plank. All right. The reason for this, I'm going to teach you, but not yet. So you understand what you're doing. You're going to get 7 planks, like little cubes. Make sure they're flat. And you're going to carve into them with a pencil, okay? Use pencil. Do not use marker. Do not use pen. None of that. It's not even, well, you could even use chalk if you want, but it's going to probably come off. All right. So you got your single wave, your double wave, your quadruple wave, because you're doubling them. You see what I'm saying? And you're going to keep on going until it's so fine where you almost can't even see the wave, but you're still going to draw it in there. Now, obviously, you don't have to keep the planks this wide, but you can keep part of them. And one of the things you're going to do is you're going to reverse. So on the opposite side of the plank, you're going to do the same thing, right? This way, you don't have to worry about when you do this whether or not it's up or down, reversed, inversed, whatever that stuff, whatever it is. All right. Now, here's what you're going to do. This is how you are going to know where you're at in your prayerful living, in your prayerful way of life. Every 7th day. Every 7th day. No. Stop that. Reverse it. Let me say it again. I retract that. Every 9th day. Whenever I correct myself, I'm not correcting me. They're helping me correct myself. So, every 9th day makes sense, right? Prayer 9. I did a whole thing on that, right? With the ash tree. I wrote you a whole entire letter on it and gave you about 20 references from it. Every 9th day, you're going to cast those 7 lots. You're going to shake them up, okay? You're going to shake them up. You could use a crane bag if you want. You can use anything you want. Anything a dice bag, dice cup, whatever you want. You're going to shake them up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to reach in and you're going to pull out 1. Okay? You're going to reach in, you're going to pull out 1. And then that is going to be where you are at in your spiritual life. Where you are in relationship to the God or gods of your understanding. Where are you at? If, okay, the waves are more dense? No. Yes. I'm sure I always get that mixed up. If the waves are more frequent, you are closer to chaos. If the wave is more flattened, you're closer to cosmos. This will allow you to know where you're at in the eyes of the God or gods of your understanding. Got it? So now you can see how you'll use those lots to cast. So this way you'll say, wow, okay, all right, I need to, go back, maybe do some things. Do you see why I taught you everything tonight? Because everything I taught you tonight cannot work if you don't have all that information. You could go ahead and do this right now, but you're not going to have a clue why you're doing it if you don't watch the entire video. And that's one of the reasons why I tell you guys, if you just want to, know this stuff and really learn it, well then really immerse yourself in it. That is sorcery. In a sense, that is Druidry. Dre out. So think of it in a way of understanding your potential in not praying as an event, but living in prayer. All right. So before I end tonight, I wanted to add something to you guys. And you guys know that I've had the bowline around my neck for the longest time. And you know also that after my attack, I found my bowline, and my bowline was totally crooked and demolished because this holy bowline took the shot for me. And it's so holy that it never broke, but it did totally just become crooked. So I ordered my new bowline, okay, and it came today. And it came in this beautiful box, and okay. Oh, here it is. Hold on. And here we go. And there it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just transfer it, the power from this, which this is already blessed. Okay, this is already blessed. This is whole. And then I'm going to just tap it. And when I tap it, I will see the energy from here leaving this, as this will just become a reminder for me that I know that the gods or the God of your understanding have my back. Nothing can defeat me because I know they are powerful ones. When I do this tonight, right now in front of you guys, you'll know that I'm back. So here we go. It's gone. There's nothing in here now. It's just a reminder piece for me. And I can now place on the new one, which I'll do. Okay. All right. This is awesome that it came, and I'm really happy because it really is very special to me here. So I got it on. There we go, guys. It's on. Woo! So anyway, that's it. What else? Your blessing, right? So I'll go ahead and I'll give you guys your blessing. So here we go. This goes beyond time and space. We are now prayerful. May the gods bless you. May the goddesses keep you. May the mysticals shine their light upon you. And may your ancestors remain with you forever and ever. Girawan. Ta sei for. Ta sei for. Thank you, everyone. Pechegobra aranit est lemogui. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for seeing that you now can be prayerful, not in the moment, not at the exact time, but always be prayerful and one with the God or gods of your understanding. Always. The kindred are the holy ones. And when you're one with them, nothing will take you down. Whatever time of day it is, make it great. And again, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I don't ask for money, but I do need subscribers so badly. So I could go live and take you guys out and do cool things, but I can't do that right now on the Facebook. So, yeah, need 1,000. But that's the best. If I tell people all the time, if that's how you want to pay me, then pay me that way. Pay me in subscribers. Just subscribe so I can go live. All right. That being said, thank you very much. I really hope that you had an awesome serene Sunday. And now you could take this information, sit on it, pray over it, and live as prayerful beings, one with God. Thank you.